Hi, my name is Bayli Mans. I'm a student in EDLC 504 at Liberty University, and for my educational thinker, I have chosen Catherine Beecher. Catherine Beecher was born on September 9th, 1800. She is the oldest of nine siblings. Her family was prominent in their town and they greatly influenced American culture and politics. Catherine attended a private school starting at age 10 in Litchfield, Connecticut, and her teacher's name was Sarah Pierce. Sarah Pierce believed that men and women were intellectually equal, and this belief, along with many others that Sarah had, were heavily absorbed by Catherine during her time as a student there. At the age of 16, unfortunately, Catherine was forced to leave school due to the death of her mother, and she had to return home to New York to take over the household duties and to help raise her younger siblings. Catherine continued on to teach herself subjects that weren't taught in schools at the time for females, like algebra and chemistry. And her brother also helped her learn Latin, which was another example of something that was offered to males in schools but not females. In 1818, Catherine began her first teaching job in New London, Connecticut, and taught there for 3 years. And not long after, in 1821, Catherine accepted a different teaching job in New Haven, Connecticut. In 1822, Catherine got engaged to a Yale professor named Alexander Fisher. He had initially become interested in Catherine after reading a poem that she had written in the recent past. Catherine was excited about her engagement to Mr. Fisher, not because he was a professor and she loved him, but that because she was able to become part of the Yale scholarly community. Shortly after their engagement, Alex Fisher died by shipwreck off the coast of Ireland on his way back from touring schools in Europe. And after Alex's death, Catherine promised herself to concentrate all of her energy into her passion, which was the education of women. Catherine was appalled that teaching was widely known as a drudgery undertaken out of financial necessity, and that it was performed by men with little knowledge or training, and they had very little drive to perform the job well. In 1823, Catherine and her sister co-founded a school for girls in Hartford, Connecticut, and they named it the Hartford Female Seminary. The school initially aimed to train women to become mothers and teachers. Catherine created a school that was more than just fine arts and language, which was the normal curriculum for females at the time. She created a curriculum of her own that would allow women to be taught subjects like algebra, chemistry, history, Latin, philosophy, and rhetoric. And she also believed that physical activity was important for females to have, so she incorporated that into her curriculum as well. Catherine felt that women were entitled to respect and responsibility outside of their common roles as wives and mothers. And this was her drive in her mission to educate women to become teachers. Because of the success that she had been having with her school so far, it had become quickly widely sought after. Catherine quickly became a popular and respected figure in Hartford, where she continued to teach for the next 8 years. After those 8 years of teaching, she decided to move to Cincinnati, Ohio, and this is because of the growing populations of the western areas of the country. These areas were showing an increased demand for teachers, and Catherine made it her mission to provide women the education needed to join the profession of teaching. Catherine fought for support from Cincinnati's residents to fundraise money to support her school, but unfortunately she was forced to close the school due to the lack of support from the city's people. Catherine hadn't been well liked in Cincinnati due to her conflicting abolitionist views. When it came to women's suffrage, Catherine was against it. She felt that the development of women's profession was more important than women's votes and believed that proper education for women should be the main battle to be won before starting another one. Since the closing of her school, Catherine had returned home and turned to writing as a means of living to spread her philosophy to others. Catherine became a well-known author after publishing a couple of books that had provided guidance and praise for a domestic life. For example, her book on Treatise on Domestic Economy that was published in 1843 became extremely popular. This book talked about practical and moral guides on topics like cooking, raising children, and general health care, and this played as a single source of household knowledge that had not yet existed before. This book earned her national fame and became extremely sought after. Catherine wrote another book in 1845 titled The Duty of Women to Their Country that argued for free public education for women. In 1852, Catherine Beecher founded the American Women's Education Association, which aimed to send teachers out west to build schools. Catherine went on to author about 30 books in her lifetime. In one of her books, she explains that allowing women to teach will open them to a road of honorable independence and extensive usefulness, without forcing them to step outside of the boundaries of feminine modesty at the time. She believed that teaching would allow women to be both professional and womanly, and that they could contribute to society without overstepping male territory. Through all of Catherine's writings, she helped gain traction towards the value of women's work in teaching in modern day society, and she presented the country with a new vision that women are strong and an influential force that can determine the direction of the nation. After many years, Catherine decided to return east. She moved home and began teaching for a brief period of time in the 1860s and 70s, and soon after she died on May 12, 1878, at 77 years old. Catherine will always be remembered as a historical figure in women's teaching and women's rights to proper education. One criticism that I found states that Catherine believed in the preparedness of female teachers to teach children from unfortunate homes, yet at the same time she worked to teach mothers to care for and teach their families. And these two positions counterbalance one another and don't make much sense. My main criticism of her teachings involve her views on feminism. She claims that teaching should be a female-dominated industry and to prove that men and women are equals. Yet, when speaking publicly about any other women's rights, like voting at the time, she was against it because she didn't think it would be a woman's place. And this was all because of her own agenda to push women in teaching and women in schools with a fair curriculum. Thank you.